Welcome into an NFL Week 7 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod. I am Nick Whalen, joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, John McKechnie. John, we survived Week 6. It has not been pretty at times this year, but we came out mostly on top in what was a really, really rocky Week 6. We saw a bunch of upsets. The parlays, the teasers that we handed out at the end of the episode last week, those went up in flames, thanks in part to the San Francisco 49ers and some of the other just generally bizarre results from Week 6, but we'll get into some of that in a moment. We'll preview every single game on the Week 7 slate. We are mere hours from the Jags' first primetime game of the year. Jags Saints coming at us on this Thursday night. As usual, we won't talk a ton about the Thursday night game. If you're watching along live, feel free to shoot us any questions you have, bets that you like for that game, any fantasy questions. We'll try to answer those throughout the show. But if you're listening to the audio version of this pod, in all likelihood, that Jags Saints game is either ongoing or has already concluded. So we'll focus most of our efforts on the Sunday slate as well as the Monday night game. John, how was your Week 6? How'd you come out?
It certainly left a feeling of room for improvement. And then
Sure.
as we look ahead to this week, I'm so glad that we get to talk about betting on this show, because on the fantasy side of things, with all the bye weeks and all the injuries, it is just a train wreck out there. I'm going to be cobbling together some of the ugliest lineups in season long that I can remember. Tough scene over there, but hey, betting totally separate from that. We love it. So I'm excited to attack this board this week. We have so many weird, funky matchups that scoring around the league is down. All these totals are perilously low. There's a lot to chew on for this slate, and I'm excited to do so and share this glorious meal with you.
Yeah, good way to put it. A lot of imagery there. I like what you're conjuring up. As you mentioned, we got 6 teams on bye. It is bye-pocalypse, as my radio co-host Jeff Erickson likes to say. No Bengals, no Cowboys, no Titans, no Jets, no Panthers, and no Houston Texans this week. Thoughts and prayers go out to each and every fantasy manager out there, especially if you're in a deeper league. I mean, I made some just really, really sad waiver claims this week. I'm going to be rolling out some pretty depressing backfield pairings in some very important leagues, nonetheless.
What's the lowest of the low? What's like the worst thing that you're putting out there?
Let's just say Jonathan Mingo is going to need to do some things this weekend. It's not good. It's not good. I'm hunting for value, man. You play in some of those, I'm in like a 14-team NFFC league, and you contrast that to like your home 12-team league that you're playing in with your aunts and uncles on ESPN. And like the waiver wire pool is night and day. Like it's unbelievable. How many sharks obviously are in those leagues. Guys are weeks ahead on almost like forecasting injuries. I mean, it's wild. I mean, Keontae Ingram, we're going to need him this week as well. It's been a tough run as far as the waiver wire goes this year. I mean, it felt like early on, it's like if you didn't get Achane, who obviously is now injured, Jerome Ford is a guy that's still hanging around, but like the Zach Moss experience feels like that's kind of on its last leg. Jaleel McLaughlin all of a sudden is back in a timeshare. Like it's brutal out there, man.
It is. I'm particularly interested in what the Rams do with their backfield, and we'll get into that once we touch on that game. But I've cast my lot with Zach Evans, and I feel worse about it by the minute. So I'm fully expecting Royce Freeman to go off this weekend, folks.
Yeah, as you should, my friend, as you should. You mentioned the low scoring in Week 6, and you're not exaggerating. Average points per game in Week 6, 18.4, and that was with the Dolphins, putting up 40 plus. The Jags put up points against the Colts. That was the lowest average score in a single week in 10 years in the NFL. Yards per play was way down this season. It feels like quarterback play is like slowly tapering off as we get along. And, now we're moving into a week where a bunch of backups will likely be under center. We'll get into those games, as we parse through the slate. I talked about my Circa picks earlier today on the RotoWire Twitter and YouTube channel. 9 of 13 games in Circa have a spread of 3 points or less. I mean, it is exceptionally rare to have more than 2/3 of games on any slate with such tight spreads. It's only happened like 3 times in the last 25 years. 5 of those games are sitting right at 3 at Circa. It's a really, really tough week. Every week is difficult. All these games are 50-50s in theory, but this to me feels like an especially hard week to find anything close to value.
Yeah, exactly. And, the 3 obviously being the key number so often. And, you're just going to you're just going to have to hold your nose on a lot of these because you don't love backing a lot of these teams that, how do you feel about the Commanders going on the road again, but it's against the Giants and, you're torn there. What do you do with the Falcons going to Tampa Bay to face the Buccaneers? Or even I think that Cleveland-Indianapolis game in another backup bowl, like you were alluding to there, like how do you trust either of those sides? Because you could easily see Indianapolis getting blown out. And the Browns defense just like logging multiple defensive touchdowns, but you could also see PJ Walker turn into PJ Walker. So like it's just it scrambles the brain, which makes me kind of love the slate in a way. But boy, I'm not expecting to be like red hot this week. So sorry to the listeners in advance.
This is a great week to just like take a pass or just bet every under. Like that's been extremely profitable. Like if you bet $100 at every under so far this year, you'd be up like $1,500. If you just want to, just take a break this week, now's the time to just sit back and enjoy football. Maybe just kind of recuse yourself from your fantasy leagues for a week, because I think we're going to see a lot of sloppy football, but it could be fun sloppy. I am kind of sadistically excited for Bears Raiders.
I am too. That's a game that will 100% be on the quad box. At the house on Sunday afternoon, right alongside the Ravens Lions game. Like I'm going to be paying very close attention to that one, and then the Bills because I'm chasing points, and they're one of the heavier, if not the heaviest favorite on the slate this week. So I'm prepared to sweat that one out. But Tyson Bagent of Shepherd University College. Is it a university? I'm not totally sure.
It's a school. Okay. I'm not sure on that either.
It's a place of higher learning. And then we got either Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer. I would, if I'm backing the Raiders, probably prefer Hoyer to be out there. I am fully expecting Max Crosby to do things that put him maybe as the odds-on favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to have a totally crazy game on Sunday. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. There's just when the theme is so strong for a given slate like this one, where it's just like gross on gross, like the negatives cancel out.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper on Bears Raiders. We'll start there as we go through every game on the Sunday and Monday slate. Right now, we are seeing the Oakland Raiders as 2.5-point favorites. The number had been holding at 3 for most of the week. Did get official confirmation a couple hours ago that Jimmy G is not in line to play Sunday. I don't know if he's officially been ruled out. They're just kind of dancing around that, but he's not going to play. We still have no idea if it's going to be Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell. O'Connell, of course, was not active last week, so it was Brian Hoyer by default. The indication from the Raiders, to me at least, was they don't want Aiden O'Connell to come into a game not prepared. But obviously, we've seen him start a game where they knew Jimmy G was not playing, going into it. So my guess is that O'Connell gets first crack here.
My guess would kind of be Hoyer, but I mean, there's two different passes this could go, because obviously the one other game that Jimmy G didn't start, it was Aiden O'Connell, and he really got fed to the wolves. And Khalil Mack basically got to like earn his contract in one Sunday. Pretty nice day for him. But regardless, I think it should go fine for the Raiders, no matter who's under center. Like I think having O'Connell already gotten his feet wet with the start here, going up against a Bears defense, it's a lot more toothless than even the Chargers one. I think that should help things. Maybe just being back in the Midwest, his natural habitat, will help things along as well. But if it's Hoyer, you're expecting just total game manager type of performance, and I think that would be more than enough for the Raiders to get this done and get the cover. But basically my lean here is that regardless of who's starting at quarterback for the Raiders, they should be able to get this done Sunday. I think that Bagent is such a liability at quarterback for the Bears. No matter what they try to do to kind of like play to his strengths, quote unquote, it's just going to get blown up like it constantly. Like the offensive line doesn't have a prayer of holding up against that pass rush. And Bagent himself, who is the son of a former multi-time arm wrestling champion, does not have grip strength whatsoever. He the one of the first dropbacks he had on this past Sunday against the Vikings, he fumbled, and it's like, well, no son of mine is fumbling when I'm the arm wrestling champion of the world. So that alone was the biggest red flag to me, and therefore it's Raiders all the way on Sunday. The autumn wind is a Raider.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like getting this at 2.5 more than 3. I'm approaching it with as much caution, I think, as possible. And I'm not telling you this is the lock of the century by any means, but I think the Raiders have the two best players in this game, in Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. You could even say 3 if you want to include Max Crosby, and he's in that upper tier for me now, Crosby, as far as like guys that can kind of single-handedly wreck a game. We've seen it a couple of times already. He had some huge plays against the Packers.
He got us the cover last week too.
He did. He single-handedly covered that game against the Patriots, forcing that safety. I think the major thing to me is kind of going a little bit undercovered. Like there were some stories coming out of Chicago, like, hey, maybe we need to give this guy a chance. Like, he went 10 of 14 for 83 yards. He threw a terrible pick. He had a fumble 6 on, I think, his third snap of the game. And the Vikings are also a terrible defense, right? So I don't know that that's the best gauge. Minnesota played a really, really sloppy game. They only had 220 yards of total offense. I mean, I do think this is going to be low scoring. The total's down to 37.5. I see this as like a 17-13, 17-10 type of game. But I do like the Raiders here. I don't think the Bears are going to be able to do a whole lot offensively. I don't see Bajan as an upgrade really in any way over Justin Fields, even if you want to say he's slightly more traditional as a passer. The inexperience factor, the lack of experience at a high level college. I mean, to me, throwing him into this spot, I don't think the Bears ever planned on Tyson Bagent taking snaps for them in real situations this year. And I think it's going a little bit like underrated, just how bad this could be for them, having him at quarterback for a full game. So we like the Raiders minus 2.5 there. I mean, I like the under on 37.5. I think we're going to like a lot of unders this week. Let's go to Lions and Ravens, your team, John. Baltimore coming back from London. Not the most convincing win over Tennessee on Sunday morning, but got 6 field goals out of Justin Tucker. I mean, dominated that game in a lot of ways, just failed to finish off a number of drives. They are 3-point favorites at home against Detroit. Total just sky high, John. 43 is the number.
Yeah, some fireworks incoming. But, the Ravens, the big talk on Ravens Twitter this week has been a concerning trend as it pertains to their splits by quarter or by half even, where a lot of their offensive production, yardage, scoring, what have you, comes in the first half, and then all of a sudden the offense just tends to go very cold in the second half. And that's an issue that, was even brought up in a lot of player interviews. They asked Lamar Jackson about it. And, you wonder if it's a Todd Monken issue, if teams are having an easy time adjusting, or, the players said that they've just they admitted that they've been kind of taking their foot off the gas in the second half. Suboptimal. They won't have that luxury this week against the Lions with the way that the Lions are playing right now. The public is all over the Lions, and I'm not surprised, because I think you look at this line, you look at how these two teams have played, and reflexively you say, I like the Lions to not just cover, but to win. Like I'm surprised that they're favored, let alone by the full, or they're underdogs by a full 3. So I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards the Lions. And, it's been tricky to cast my lot with this Ravens team, but they are home. I know coming back from London can be tricky, although the Jaguars, of course, showed us last week that it can be done. But I think that the Ravens and their defense is going to affect Jared Goff enough. And I think that the Lions are going to have difficulty running the ball, sans David Montgomery, and maybe with a limited Craig Reynolds or Jahmyr Gibbs. And, that running back situation is looking pretty tough for the Lions. I know that doesn't dictate the entire outcome of the game, but if you make the Lions one-dimensional and are able to kind of defensively pin your ears back and focus on one thing, and that's stopping the pass, I think it's doable to an extent with the personnel that the Ravens have in the back end, and also with their pass rushers. So even with all of the public confidence in the Lions, everyone loves the Lions. I think this is a week where the Ravens come out and they do end up winning this game and covering.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one, because I've held this like harboring belief that like the Lions are still not quite in that upper echelon in the NFC, and they've done nothing but prove me wrong so far. And I think we were on Tampa Bay last week. We thought that might be the trip up spot for Detroit, but to kind of play 2 of those same spot games in a row, you go to Tampa Bay, now you're going up to Baltimore 2 consecutive weeks. If the Ravens coming back from London, that's kind of a 50-50 thing to me. It seems like it affects some teams, others it doesn't. I think you could find examples on either side, but the Lions running back situation does concern me because, David Montgomery's not going to play in this game. We have no idea about Jahmyr Gibbs. He was limited today. Craig Reynolds was also limited today. I think if either of them play, they're not going to be 100%. They've been pretty hesitant to deploy Jahmyr Gibbs anyway, even when he's fully healthy. And I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball on Baltimore. So that puts a lot on Jared Goff. And to his credit, he's been able to make it work in those situations. Like, they didn't run the ball well last week against Tampa Bay, ended up being just fine. We should note Sam Laporta remains limited with a calf injury as well. So that's another one to watch in advance of Sunday. As of right now, this is a stay away for me. I want more injury clarity on the Detroit side. But before I make a decision here, I do want to ask you about the Baltimore defense. I think the run defense is for real. I don't really worry about that against Detroit, but a lot of the defensive numbers would say, Baltimore is a better defensive team than Detroit, and Detroit's been pretty good in their own right. But when you dig into, the opponents and the quarterback specifically that Baltimore has faced, you got CJ Stroud, his first NFL game. You got a banged up Joe Burrow in week 2. I believe it was Gardner Minshew in week 3. They ended up losing that game. You got the DTR game against Cleveland, Kenny Pickett, and then Malik Willis / Ryan Tannehill. So do you feel like we've gotten an accurate gauge of this pass defense for Baltimore?
Unlikely. Probably incomplete would be the grade as far as that's concerned. Reflexively, defensively, it's like for the Ravens, they've had to roll out backup quarterbacks during the stretch run of the season each of the last 2 years. So no apologies for having the shoe be on the other foot or anything. But obviously, Jared Goff in this Lions passing attack will be the biggest test that the Ravens have faced so far in that front. But I think it's huge that Marlon Humphrey continues to get healthier every week. And I think one of the kind of unsung heroes of this Baltimore secondary thus far, it has been Brandon Stevens out of SMU. I think he's a third-year guy, and he's really played extremely well. It was coming in on paper when you look at the secondary or the cornerback personnel that wasn't going to have Marlon Humphrey for the first month of the season, you're like, these guys might get lit up, and they were still able to have good production. Obviously, bad quarterbacks that they were facing for the most part, but I think that this is a secondary that is going to be up to the challenge. I thought they were okay at times last year, and I think that it should be a steadying force. It's not a strong point. Like, they're still going to need the pass rush to get home, but even still, I think that they do have the personnel to hold up. I think Humphrey on Amon-Ra St. Brown, if they sign him into the slot, is going to be must-see TV.
Lions are 14-2 ATS in their last 16 games, which is pretty outrageous. The dog loves that stat, no question about it. We're also looking at 16 to 17 mile per hour winds, John, forecasted in Baltimore for Sunday afternoon. So something to keep an eye on there.
That's bad for Goff. That's very bad for Goff.
It is. Okay, Browns-Colts. Browns-Colts, another game with a 3-point spread. Browns are up to 3-point favorites on the road at Indy. Again, we're not really sure what the status is on Deshaun Watson. I feel more optimistic about it today than I did yesterday or earlier this week. He was limited. He was back at practice on Thursday. That's a great sign for Deshaun Watson. But when you hear him, talk about what's going on with his shoulder, it doesn't sound like somebody who, feels like he's close to 100%. So I think even a limited Deshaun Watson is better and less mistake prone, more importantly, than PJ Walker. I don't think there's a chance we see DTR, even though PJ Walker is technically on the practice squad right now. He's going to be the guy if it's not Watson. I don't feel super comfortable about this, but this is kind of one of the games I want to include in Circa, John, because I really, really trust this Cleveland defense. And, in a lot of weeks, this wouldn't be on the card. But when you're trying to parse through some really difficult games, some really tight spreads, I think by far the best unit in this game is the Cleveland defense.
It is, and it's going to have to carry them. Even with Watson's status seemingly improving, I think that bodes better for week 8 than it does week 7. Like, it feels like it's smart but frustrating at the same time. But when you're a quarterback and your throwing shoulder is messed up, like, take some time. Like, it is kind of the more pragmatic approach, even though, Cleveland has given him all this money for, not a whole lot on the field just yet. But regardless, I do like the idea of this Cleveland defense, which I'm sure has to be flying high after what it did last week against San Francisco, basically going out and winning the game for them. I think that's huge. And I think that, what we saw from that Cleveland offense, where Amari Cooper can just kind of go Superman mode sometimes, and people do seem to forget that. So regardless of who's at quarterback, it feels like Cooper is in a really nice spot here. So the offense might be able to generate a little bit more than we're expecting here. And, on top of it, just the defense is going to be a little bit too much for Minshew and company to handle. Am lightly concerned about a potential Jonathan Taylor breakout because it's been, slow going so far. But, like the numbers dictate that, he's going to get on track sooner rather than later. But I don't know if it's against Cleveland.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm with you in general. I think at some point Jonathan Taylor is going to, make his impact known for this team. But I don't think it comes against, what's been the fourth best run defense in the NFL in terms of EPA so far. I mean, the Browns are allowing 79 rush yards per game thus far, 3.5 yards per attempt. Those are both in the top 5 in the NFL. Gardner Minshew, by the way, as you noted in our notes here, terrible against the spread. 2-10 ATS in his last 12 starts. Like he's seemingly better not knowing that he's going to start. Like if they could like start somebody just for one snap and then bring him in, I'd feel more confident. But yeah, anytime he's like able to prepare for a start, it doesn't seem to go well. Cleveland is in like all-time territory as far as yards allowed total through 5 games. They've allowed 9 total red zone possessions on the year, and I can think of a couple right away where it's a turnover that turns into an instant red zone for the opponent. I saw a note on the Action Network that they've allowed the fewest first downs through 5 games since 1970. So we could quibble about the opponents and situations and things like that, and some of the injuries for San Francisco last week, but most of the numbers point to this Cleveland defense being, not only a great defense in 2023, but one of the better defenses that we've seen to begin a season in a while. So the offensive side of the ball, you worry about it for Cleveland. I don't think there's going to be a ton of scoring either way, but this is one where I think the Colts are really going to struggle to matriculate the ball down the field and generate multiple red zone opportunities. And if Cleveland's stopping the run, that means you're putting the ball in Minshew's hands. Sometimes that could be good. He could throw you into games. He could also throw you out of games like he did last week against Jacksonville. 3 interceptions, lost a fumble on a sack as well. The Jags are a fine defense. They're slightly above league average. They've been surprisingly good, but to me, Cleveland is on another level.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Returning home should help things. I suppose we'll have to dig into the splits at the big oil drum there in Indy to see what their numbers are when the window is open, that type of thing. But that's something that we won't know until 3 hours before kickoff on Sunday, I think is when they have to announce that. So either way, give me Cleveland.
Yep, we like the Browns there. Buffalo and New England. The Buffalo Bills, 8.5-point favorites over the lowly New England Patriots. The Pats, this is their biggest home dog number since 2001. As you recall, John, the last time they played at home 2 weeks ago against the Saints, that was a 34-0 beatdown, and the Saints can't really score on anybody, which is not a mark in favor of New England. Coming off of just another disheartening game last week against the Raiders, and I like this a lot as a get-right spot for the Buffalo Bills. We saw something kind of similar. Week 1, they had that big letdown against the Jets. Josh Allen is turning it over left and right. They welcome in the Las Vegas Raiders in week 2 and just kind of lay the smack down there. I think, get rid of some of those frustrations. I don't want to, go too far down narrative street here, but I kind of see the same thing happening. This feels like a kind of an eruption game for Buffalo and, in their efforts to try to get right.
Yeah, I don't think that they will mind taking the screws to the Patriots when they have the opportunity to do so. I think this is a great buy low spot on the Bills after, one of the ugliest nationally televised games that we've seen in quite some time against the Giants. I mean, Tyrod Taylor, if not for that mistake at the end of the first half, maybe we're talking about the Bills coming off of a loss at home. But I think going into New England, this New England team is so dead. And I know, like, when you paint yourself into a corner where it's like this pick is obvious, it can be kind of a dicey spot to be in. But boy, if the Bills don't do this, I'm going to feel like I'm drowning. Like I'm going to feel like I don't know what I'm doing, even more than usual. So no, I like the Bills here. I think that the banged up personnel in that New England defense is, if they can't play defense, the offense isn't going to be able to help whatsoever. So they need to keep the Bills like under 21 points, and there's no way that they're going to. So this is the ultimate, like you said, get right spot for Buffalo. Even though it's a big number, I think that they do cover it.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I am. And, it's the biggest number on the slate. And sometimes it feels like a cop out to just, take the biggest favorite. But I think this number could be higher. I really do. I don't know if the Patriots are still hanging on to some lingering, Belichick legacy respect here, but this is just a bad team. It's a bad team. And, they've lost arguably their best two defensive players. That seems like it's made an instant impact, perhaps even more than we thought, losing Judon and Christian Gonzalez. And look, the games where the Buffalo Bills struggle, when they have these just like blow up games out of nowhere, the common thread is turnovers, right? It's Josh Allen turning the ball over. It's, Gabe Davis fumbling the ball. To beat the Bills, you absolutely need to force turnovers. And the Pats have forced 3 total turnovers all year. Obviously, that is the lowest in the NFL. I mean, I don't see that happening. I don't see the Bills doing this 2 weeks in a row. Like they're always good for 1 or 2 of those games throughout the season. They rarely string 2 of them together in a row. And I think they get right here. So we do like the Bills minus 8.5. We'll have to consider that for the Circa card as well. Speaking of Circa, John, we're in the middle of football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game, college, pros, or even outside of football. Right now you could watch playoff baseball, you can watch NBA preseason, whatever you want. They have that TV split into 12 different screens. You can catch all the action poolside from a variety of seating options. They got day beds, they got private temperature-controlled cabanas. They have their own TVs in the cabanas. It's the best out there at Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino, and it's open 365 days a year. All sports, all seasons. Book today at circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. All right, let's move on to the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. We got an NFC East battle here, John. Giants 2.5-point dogs at home. Another low total. This one sitting down at 37.5. My initial lean here is Commanders, but this is probably closer to a stay away for me. I don't really trust either of these teams, and I'm not convinced that what the Giants showed us by hanging in with the Bills the other night. I don't know that suddenly this team has figured anything out. Certainly the return of Saquon Barkley helps. We knew that would be the case. They needed some sort of infusion, but I don't know that we could trust this team to play like that 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, one of my favorite sequential moments on the Sunday night broadcast was them running a graphic about how bad Saquon Barkley had been in that game, and then he just rips off 3-yard long runs right in a row. That was chef's kiss. But yeah, obviously Barkley makes a huge impact, but it kind of is all for naught with that offensive line. The offensive line is still absolutely in tatters. I think somebody tore their biceps this week on that offensive line, in practice, I want to say. So, I mean, it's gone from worse to worser somehow for this Giants front. And that's bad news when there's Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen, and they can get anything out of Chase Young. That screams a troublesome spot for this Giants team. And then, the Commanders offense, it's uneven to say the least. Everyone's hand-wringing about Jahan Dotson's usage, but I think the sum and total of it is exactly fine. Definitely good enough to beat this Giants defense that has, for the most part, it's turned it around a little bit in recent weeks, but for the most part, been just a shadow or a shell of what it was a year ago. So I do expect Washington to have a fine day offensively, and I think that will be enough to carry them to an ugly win. But I'm with you as far as staying away and not involving this one on the ticket.
Yeah, it just has to be a stay away for me. Even the total might be a stay away. I don't really trust the Washington run defense. That's been the source of some issues for them on the defensive end, and I do think Saquon Barkley could get loose against this team, but. We've also seen them, rack up points, right? I mean, they have 2 30-point games on the year, which in this season is saying a lot. Those came against Denver and Philly, but we've also seen them completely no-show like they did against Buffalo in week 3 and then against Chicago in week 5. So they to me are kind of the number one Jekyll and Hyde team. You just don't know what version is going to show up week to week. It would not shock me if the Giants won this game. And I think everything we've said is basically pointing to a stay away. So we will not be including that one on the Circa card. I don't recommend that you do either. Another tough one, John. This one's sitting at 2.5 as well. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, home favorites against the Atlanta Falcons. Total is 37 in this game. I'm done with Desmond Ridder. I've had it.
Yeah, baby.
I've had enough. How many opportunities did the Falcons have to win that game against Washington last week. It was just time after time after time. Washington goes up 24-10. It kind of felt like it was over at that point. And I don't think Atlanta expected to have that many opportunities. They went for 2 after scoring and didn't get it. And there is something like psychological to me about that. Like when you don't get it, even though you're still down a score, like an 8-point deficit versus like 6 or 7 is so much different. And they had enough chances late in the game that it's like if they just kicked a bunch of field goals, they would have won this game. But obviously, you don't count on your defense to continue to force 3, 4, 5 and outs like they were. I can't do it anymore with Desmond Ridder, man. I know it's back-to-back 300-yard weeks, but is there a quarterback right now who you trust less, inside the 20-yard line than you do Desmond Ridder?
No, they need to be running the ball when they are down close to the goal line. And the problem for them in that respect, as it pertains to this matchup, is Tampa is pretty dirty against the run. Like they're pretty nasty. So if that Atlanta run game isn't clicking, which again I'm not expecting it to, then it's all on the shoulders of Desmond Ridder on the road in the division. That sounds like a really bad setup for them. And I talked a lot last week for going into the Buccaneers-Lions game. Like we're going to learn a lot about both of those teams. And I think what we learned about the Buccaneers is that they can absolutely beat anyone who's on their level or below, but they can't punch up a weight class. Like their losses against both the Eagles and the Lions, both at home, kind of underscore that. But their ability to win those more like 50-50 toss-up games has been largely impressive. I don't think a lot of people expected them to go into Minnesota in week 1 and do what they did. So I like them to bounce back here. I like them to get the win. 2.5 is a nice number to have to trust with them. Yeah. Don't have to get over the field goal there. So give me the Bucs, and I'm actually fairly strong on it.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the Bucs run defense, that's what scares me. If you're trying to convince yourself that Atlanta could win this game, we think of Atlanta as this dominant rushing team, and to begin the year, they go out week 1, they put up 130 rushing yards on Carolina, they racked up 211 rushing yards against Green Bay in week 2, and since then, the running game just hasn't really been there. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, they'll rip off a big play every now and then, but they're averaging, John, just 93 rushing yards over their last 4 games. Those coming against Detroit, Jacksonville, Houston, and Washington. Like Washington especially, that's a team that you should be able to run against. And for whatever reason, like you said, they get away from it. They're allowing Desmond Ridder too many opportunities to make mistakes. And that's what's frustrating, because I kind of think of Atlanta as a well-coached team that knows who it is, even if they're wasting some of the talent on that offense. For the most part, like last year, they were a team that felt like they were kind of playing above their weight, right? I mean, they were winning games that sometimes maybe they shouldn't have. And now I feel like they're losing games that they shouldn't lose. And yeah, I think you're right. I think they're going to struggle to run the ball again on Tampa. I mean, the flip side of that is Tampa just can't run the ball at all. And I think at least the Buccaneers know that. Like last season, it felt like they would try to run the ball like 3 times to begin the game. Rashad White would get stuffed. And then it was just, the Tom Brady short pass raid. They don't really have the quarterback to do that anymore. But I think at least Tampa Bay kind of knows who it is and is willing to play to that. Whereas, like if Atlanta can't get to 120, 130 rushing yards on Tampa Bay, I think they're really going to struggle to move the ball. So my lean is the Buccaneers on that one as well. And like you said, 2.5 is a pretty attractive number there. Let's move into the late window. We got Steelers-Rams. This is going to be a fun game. I don't enjoy watching the Steelers, but I am curious. I'm Steelers curious as far as like, how is this team 3-2? How do they keep doing this? Steelers are 3-point dogs on the road at LA. Going to be a ton of Steelers fans in that building. Total is 43.5. It's pretty high for a Steelers game. Last time we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were doing what the Steelers do and somehow winning a game that they had no business winning against the Baltimore Ravens. But that also took like 10 drops from Baltimore. That was a game that the Ravens absolutely should have won. I don't think Pittsburgh deserved it whatsoever. You give some credit to George Pickens and Kenny Pickett for making some big plays, hitting a big touchdown to ultimately win it late. But even coming off of a bye, even with all of the, Mike Tomlin as an underdog trends that we could throw out there, I find myself liking the Rams.
I like the Rams as well. I think that the Steelers secondary is subpar. And when you have a Rams team that probably just isn't going to be interested in running the ball, then you're getting upwards of 20, maybe even 25 targets combined to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. that's going to translate into a fairly long day for the Steelers secondary, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's key point one. And then the second point is that the Rams defense has been okay so far, and okay is plenty good enough against a Pittsburgh offense that even coming off the bye, I'm dubious at the idea of Matt Canada figuring everything out over these last 2 weeks and getting things.
He's been in the lab, man.
Yeah, that's fine in the maple syrup lab, but I just no, that offense is putrid. It's going to remain stuck in the mud here, even against a defense that's average at best. And I think that bottom line here, that the Rams offense is the strongest unit, especially the passing game. So give me the Rams. Again, when it comes to the Rams backfield this week, I was initially very interested in Zach Evans. They sign all those veterans. So it could be some weird mishmash of, oh, I remember that guy. I mean, there's going to be Myles Gaskin potentially involved. There could be some Royce Freeman. I forgot that he was even still in the league until this week.
I don't think he was in the league, was he? I mean, he's just hanging out.
Yeah, just doing his thing. But I'm in on the Rams this week, even with a 0 for its run game.
See, normally I'd be a little concerned about the Rams' rush defense. Like that has been their weakness. They've given up 130 plus on the ground in 4 of the last 5 games. But I don't think the Steelers exploit that, right? I think the Steelers are kind of the perfect team. If you're struggling to stop the run, you want to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I think this will be, it'll have the feel of somewhat of a Steelers home game, but you still got to travel. I don't really put the bye into a ton of consideration here. And I feel like the Rams offense is picking up steam, right? Like I did not necessarily expect Cooper Kupp to return on the short end of his timetable. I didn't expect him to look like vintage Cooper Kupp right away. And he has. Like, I think him plus the emergence of Puka Nacua gives this Rams offense a dynamic that we never really considered that it would have. And I think Pittsburgh's going to struggle to stop that. So I'm with you. I mean, you could tell that we're not absolutely hammer this one, no doubter of the week, but I'm not ready to put any faith in Pittsburgh. I don't think they could pull another rabbit out of the hat like they did against Baltimore twice in 2 games.
No, I don't either. I think rivalry games clearly things go out the window in those. And Pittsburgh and the Rams, they do not have a storied rivalry that I'm aware of. Maybe back in the Merlin Olsen days.
Yeah, I guess other than like Jerome Bettis played for both teams, that's really the only thing I can think of. There are some matchups this week where I'm like, have these teams ever played? Like I can't picture the Steelers playing the Rams. Like that's just one that doesn't really add up to me. Like even Lions Ravens, like is this the first ever meeting?
If not for the crazy Justin Tucker field goal a couple years ago, actually Tucker has killed the Lions a few times with his field goals. Yeah. His second season in 2013, he hit his 61-yarder to beat the Lions on a Monday Night Football game as well. So I feel like Lions fans definitely have their voodoo dolls out for old Justin Tucker.
Yeah. Okay. So we like the Rams there. Pittsburgh, by the way, according to the Action Network's metrics, they are the luckiest team in the NFL, which that checks out to say the least. All right. We continue in the late window with Cardinals-Seahawks. Seattle 7.5-point favorites at home. 44.5 is our total. I like Seattle here. I like this as a bounce back spot for the Seahawks. We talked about it at the top. I mean, the amount of opportunities that they had to win that game against Cincinnati, if you look at just some of the basic metrics in that game. I mean, Seattle was plus 167 in terms of total yards of offense. They ran 17 more plays. They averaged 1.4 more yards per play. They converted more third downs. They had 9 more first downs than the Bengals. And somehow that only resulted in 13 points, thanks in part to 2 picks from Geno. One of those come in right at the goal line. They had a first and goal from the 7 and separately a first and goal or first and 10 from the 11 late in that game. Both of those drives stalled out. Neither of them resulted in points. This was another game much like Washington and Atlanta and really Houston and New Orleans kind of felt like this too, where I think if Seattle had the benefit of knowing how many possessions they would have had, they would have just kicked the field goal and ended up winning this game. But they kept going for it, kept failing, kept turning the ball over. Losses like that, they can stick with you in some ways, but I'm pretty confident here in Seattle returning home, bouncing back. Geno Smith is 19-13 ATS in his career after a loss. And look, I respect Arizona a lot. They've already looked better than I thought they would multiple times this season, but we're starting to see some cracks in that foundation on defense.
Yeah, we are, for as competitive and gritty as the Cardinals seem to be through the first month or so of the season, it just feels like the magic, if you can even call it that, has worn off a little bit. Pretty convincing losses to the Bengals and the Rams over the last 2 weeks. They got to go up to Seattle. That's always a raucous environment. Chris Owen, fellow RotoWire guy, lives out in Seattle. Him and I do a survivor pool together. We co-manage that one. He's offering to go to the game if we need to add some extra vibes in favor of the Seahawks in Survivor. So, I'm on the Seahawks. I've already been talked into it as a result of that offer. But regardless, it's just tricky to see Arizona hanging with it. Like they might be able to put up a competitive first half, and we're sweating a little bit about the winning by more than a touchdown. But I think overall, once this game plays out over 60 minutes, Seattle does end up outclassing the Cardinals in a way that they do end up winning and covering.
Arizona 1-10 ATS in its last 11 games in the division. So that should hopefully push us a little bit more towards Seattle. All right, a couple more games in the late window. We got Packers-Broncos, John. Let's get fired up here. Packers coming off of a bye. They get the Denver Broncos. This should be a get-right spot for the Green Bay offense that desperately needs it. The return of Aaron Jones, I think, cannot be overstated. It's a little bit shocking how much Green Bay misses him. Like, Aaron Jones is a great player, no question about it. He's still probably the 5th to 7th best back in the NFL. Like, I don't know that this offense should hinge completely on whether or not Aaron Jones plays. And these last couple of games without him, that's how it's felt. Like they've been completely lost. They were toothless against Detroit. They were toothless against the Las Vegas Raiders in Vegas prior to the bye. Packers do have a rest advantage, but not that big of one because Denver did play on Thursday last week. So something to consider there. But I do expect to see a more competent version of this Green Bay offense. The question is, Denver's defense, we've taken shots at them. Everybody has all season. Like, the offense it's been there. It has been an NFL offense. And I still don't know if I fully trust Green Bay on the other side. So I give slight lean to the Packers here. This is basically a pick the winner game. Packers are 1-point favorites. Total's 45, but hard to feel confident either way.
It is. I think the Broncos, like, it was so bad last year that like there's still kind of like the residual disdain for this offense. Like, anytime that they go 3 and out, it seems like particularly seismic relative to like any other team if they had any sort of offensive cachet, but they don't have that benefit of the doubt. They can't figure out their wide receiver personnel, target distribution, whatever. Russ played, I thought, really poorly last week, but I think on balance this season, he's definitely been better than he was a year ago. They need to get Marvin Mims more involved because his numbers on a per target basis have been tremendous. I don't know what the disconnect there is. Literally I think you should leave meme with the hot dog guy with Sean Payton saying I can't believe Marvin Mims hasn't broken out yet. Well, I don't know. Put him on the field.
What was the exact quote? He's dying to break out.
Yeah, oh gosh, I just wish there was someone that wasn't standing in his way. But yeah, I'm out on the Broncos. Their defense is still very bad. I'm pretty much out on Jordan Love. I've decided. I thought that Raiders game was really, really concerning, but getting a healthier Aaron Jones back against this Broncos run defense, I think, should be the difference. So give me the Pack to win.
Broncos are yet to win a game ATS this season. 0-5-1. I think that the one question is, like, did they figure something out on defense against Kansas City, or did they just kind of get lucky with Mahomes making a couple questionable throws, which we've seen from him more often than we have in the past, it feels like, this season. I lean toward no. I still think this is a historically bad defense, and Green Bay's not a good offense, but I think Green Bay grinds out a pretty ugly win here. To me, it's like a 23-20 type of game.
Okay, so we're on the under as well.
Yes, we are on the under. I don't trust Green Bay that much. All due respect to Aaron Jones. All right, finishing out the late window, Chargers-Chiefs. KC, 5.5-point favorite at home. 48 is the number. Relatively sizable rest advantage for the Chiefs, who played on Thursday night in Week 6. Chargers, of course, played Monday night against the Dallas Cowboys. Weird game for the Chargers. Justin Herbert missing some throws that he doesn't normally miss. Obviously, they got the huge break toward the end of the game on the Jalen Tolbert. Thought the guy touched it, attempted fumble recovery on the punt that gave the Chargers a chance to tie the game late. end up losing that game regardless to Dallas. I'm on LA here, and this is one where I'm willing to kind of blindly follow some of the trends. And number one is these teams always play close games, right? I mean,
Right.
the last 2 years they played, or last 3 years I should say, they've played one-score games in 5 of the last 6 meetings. They played a pair of 3-point games last season. Like Justin Herbert always seems to get up for this matchup, and the Chiefs are 5-1. They are deservedly, a team that is always going to be near the top of the AFC, if not the best team. But the offense is still concerning, man. It really is. And I know we went through this last year, and I know they won the Super Bowl, and they'll, in all likelihood, probably find a way back to the Super Bowl because they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. But it feels a little more dire this year. Like I don't get the sense that they're building something, with these receivers. Like last year, you kind of felt like as the year went along, it's like, okay, I see the progression. It just feels like they're starting over every week with this group of receivers.
Well, did you not see that they traded for Mecole Hardman yesterday?
I did. Speaking of starting over, yeah.
Yeah, baby. So he's a dog. Love Mecole, but I don't know if he fixes the woes in that receiving.
Is he going to play this week?
I'm dubious, but I figure if there's one place that he could have been traded midweek and he could play on Sunday, it would obviously be Kansas City. I do think Rashee Rice is ascending, but they still definitely need some help in that receiving core. I've seen them be linked to the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes potentially as the trade deadline looms. But as we know, as seasoned NFL watchers, the trade deadline, it's all theoretical, and on actual trade deadline day, very rarely do things happen like the Christian McCaffrey deal in season a year ago. But as it goes with this game, my lean is on the Chargers. I think that they do tend to play the Chiefs very close. That they're a tough team to trust betting wise generally, but it seems like against the Chiefs that they play with a different level of edge. So I think Herbert bounces back. I know that rest disadvantage is a bit concerning for the Chargers in this spot, but I think they need no extra motivation going into KC, trying to rinse last week's game off. I like the Chargers to hang in there and lose by a field goal.
Chargers have either led or tied their last 4 meetings with the Chiefs going into the fourth quarter. Justin Herbert 5-1 ATS against the Chiefs in his career. He's 7-0 against the spread as a dog of 5 points or more. Also, another good stat that I found via the Action Network. They do great write-ups every single week. I encourage everybody to check those out. Herbert is 25-1. That's 25 and then 1 push ATS when the Chargers allow fewer than 27 points. KC is 5-1 on the year. They've only scored 27 twice. They got to exactly 27 against Minnesota, and then of course the 41-pointer against Chicago. So if this LA defense can do anything, or if we still believe that the Chiefs are a bit stuck in the mud on offense, if they could just keep Kansas City in check, I think the Chargers score enough to maybe not win this game. Like I like Kansas City to win. I think we keep the trend going and they win like a 3 or 4 point game. But I like the Chargers to cover.
I do as well. So we're on 27 watch
yes.
for Sunday afternoon. Very good.
Let's move to Sunday Night Football. We got a banger, John. This is the game of the week by a mile. Dolphins-Eagles. Eagles 2.5 point favorites at the bank. 52 is the total. That is very high by week 7 standards. Chargers-Chiefs is 48, by the way, but this is the highest of the week by a good margin. Oh, really tough one for me. Really tough. We saw, the Dolphins kind of had their marquee matchup against the Bills earlier this season. They fall flat there. And, you wonder now going to the Eagles in somewhat of a similar spot, like, does the same thing happen, or do the Dolphins find a way to avenge that? Because I feel like if Miami loses this game, there's going to be this season-long thing of like, all right, yeah, this is really cute. They could put up 49 on all the average teams and especially the bad teams. But, when they play the big boys, that little, fun collegey offense of theirs, it's not going to work.
Right. It's, like in the days of yore, like, like the number 4 seed in the college football playoff, that lit it up offensively every single week of the season. Then they run into Alabama and just get put into the wood chipper. But this one, I go back and forth on it as well. Obviously, these are the top 2 offenses in the league. I looked it up earlier this week, and obviously the Dolphins are on a record-setting pace at atop that metric. The Eagles are second, and they're over 100 yards per game lower than the Dolphins are. So it's just insane what the Dolphins are doing on offense. And I think what steers me in Miami's direction is that this receiving core against what is a perceived weakness on this Eagles team is the secondary, and so them having to hold up against Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle now that he's healthy. If you get Raheem Mostert out in space, like that's just a lot to contend with for this Eagles secondary. And so the pass rush is going to be key. We'll see if Tua, the metrics earlier this season where he was the quickest to get rid of the ball in the league and still getting the ball way downfield. I think that really does help the Dolphins in this instance. So I'm looking for some big plays there. That defensively, Miami is going to probably struggle to stop the run. I know that the Eagles struggled to run the ball, but that was against the Jets, so that's like a totally different beast to contend with. But I think one of the big takeaways from that Miami loss in Buffalo was that Stephon Diggs ate their lunch, and if AJ Brown is on a similar warpath, then this could be very problematic for the Dolphins. But Jalen Hurts has more interceptions this year than he did all of last season, being a little bit more careless with the ball.
That's what people are saying.
So if that trend continues, and the Dolphins get set up in plus territory and are snuffing out these Philly drives, I think the Dolphins can go in there and get the win.
Man, I think I give a slight lean to the Eagles here at home. Every point you made is valid. I do think there are some like strength on weakness matchups in this game. That being Dolphins passing game and big playability versus the Eagles secondary. But I think especially if Jalen Carter is able to play in this game, and he's been limited throughout the week, kind of 50-50 right now. Seems to be some optimism that he'll be back. I think that's going to go a long way towards stopping Miami on the ground. And you see all the points go up every single week, and they're doing so much of this on the ground, right? Like Tua's been fine; he's been great. Waddle, Hill, they're good for several big plays every single game. They lead the league in big plays. Eagles are second, by the way, in terms of 10+ yard runs and 25+ yard passes. These teams are kind of neck and neck there. I think what Miami's able to do through the air, exploiting this Philly defense, I think Philly's going to be able to do the same thing on the ground. I mean, this is not a good rush defense for Miami. They're 26th in rushing EPA so far this season. I think this is a big spot for DeAndre Swift. And, I think it's going to be kind of a really interesting contrast in battles here, because I don't think Miami's going to be able to run the ball all that well by their standards. I think Philly's going to be able to run the ball really well. I think Miami's going to be able to throw the ball really well. So all this to me results in a high scoring game, a back and forth game. And in those situations, I'm going to take the home team, especially when they're only favored by 2.5. And I'm going to take the defense that overall I trust more in Philly. So I think this is a one possession game. I think it's decided late, but I think the Eagles ground game is the side that I want to be on.
This is likely a unwarranted heat check from me to be on the Dolphins.
I don't think it's a heat check, man. I mean, I think there's plenty of reasons to like the Dolphins. I mean, the Eagles are coming off of a disaster game last week, right? I mean, we haven't really even touched on that. Like, how much stock do we put in what the Eagles did a week ago? Like, if we're willing to kind of throw it out for the Bills, and granted they're playing the Patriots, so it's a different story. But does that linger at all for Philly?
It could, and they didn't get out of that game unscathed either. I mean, Lane Johnson, he practiced today in a limited fashion, but if he's not himself, we saw the issues that arose after he goes out last week against the Jets. He is such a key cog of that offensive line that if you get just 75% Lane Johnson or zero, if he ends up missing this game, that does change the calculus. It changes, how this Philly offense functions completely.
Jalen Hurts, by the way, 14-1 straight up as a home favorite in his career. The only loss coming to Taylor Heineke last season.
Close.
So we'll go head to head on this one. I don't feel great about it either way. You could absolutely talk me into the Dolphins by Sunday night, but very excited to watch that one. Again, Eagles 2.5 is the number at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's finish out with Monday Night Football, John. 49ers at the Minnesota Vikings, total of 44. San Francisco favored by 6.5. This is kind of a wait and see for us right now. We're recording this on Thursday evening, so still waiting for a ton of injury news, a ton of big time players for the San Francisco 49ers banged up after last week. Deebo Samuel did not practice on Thursday. Christian McCaffrey did not practice on Thursday. Trent Williams, don't have a firm practice update on him, according to RotoWire.com, but he's considered day-to-day. the good news is all those guys seem to have avoided long-term injuries. The question to me is, if you're San Francisco and you're McCaffrey, you're Debo, are you pushing to get back for this game? Because San Francisco, I think conceivably could probably talk themselves into winning this game without the bulk of those players. Do they take more of a long-term approach here? If those guys are in, if even two of Debo, McCaffrey, and Williams are in, I really like the 49ers at this number. And I think we could see this number move quite a bit by Monday night.
Yeah, there's certainly potential for that. A lot of it does hinge on the offensive star power on the San Francisco side, but the Vikings are basically drawing dead at this point. I mean, we got a nice glimpse of what the offense looks like. Sans Justin Jefferson against the Bears on a nice day in Chicago, and they still mustered all of 19 points, some of those coming on the defensive side. And you might have a mad, angry San Francisco team that, as a result, on the other end of that could get real ugly. So, I mean, I would have hammered this, a week ago, and I'm not going to let a slip up in Cleveland steer me off the notion that the Niners are the best team in football. I think they go in there, take care of business, and they win this one by more than a touchdown. So I do like the Niners here.
What's interesting is the look ahead on this one prior to week 6 was San Francisco by 7. Yeah, and this was after we knew about the Jefferson injury. So I'm it's at Minnesota. That means something, I suppose. But I you just don't really feel like this Vikings team has it this year, right? I mean, everything that was going for them last year, but felt like it evaporated by week 2. They still don't have a rushing touchdown on the season. That's not good. That's not a good sign. This is a primetime game for Kirk Cousins. We know all about that. In night games, he's 12-18 ATS in his career, 11-19 straight up. It's not good, man. I mean, in his last 7 primetime appearances, he's 1-6 ATS. So I cautiously lean San Francisco here. I think I want to be very careful not to overcorrect, because every team is allotted, 1 or 2 of those just bizarre slip-up games. And I feel like an idiot because I've said so many times on this show, like, man, San Francisco, they're just bulletproof, man. They can lose 2 or 3 guys any week and they'll just keep rolling. Obviously, that's not the case. They're as susceptible as anybody to a game like they had last week against Cleveland. But I'm willing to write that one off. I think they've earned that. I think they get the cachet that maybe some other teams don't. And I think this environment, playing inside, favors them a lot more than everything that was going on with the elements in Cleveland. It just felt like that game spiraled, and with each player to go down, you kind of felt worse about the 49ers' chances. And we might be talking about them completely differently if they just make a 41-yard field goal to win the game.
No, exactly. It's like they played a bad game, but they escaped with the victory. So yeah, don't change your opinion on this team for the, that last week's loss was a total albatross. Don't expect anything like that to happen again this season. And then, yeah, like you said, primetime Kirk, love to bet against that. So, this all points me towards San Francisco fairly strongly. I wouldn't fight you if you wanted to include that on the tickets.
All right, let's hit some Survivor talk real quickly. Then we'll hand out our parlays of the week. I will reveal the teaser for week 7, and we'll give our best bets. It's tough to talk about Survivor at this point because you don't know who everybody's used. We're 6 weeks into the year. A lot of the big dogs have already been used. So, yeah, if you have the Bills, you might want to use them against the New England Patriots. But do you have any kind of under-the-radar plays that you like if you've already used Buffalo?
So Seattle is where I'm landing with it, because there probably hasn't been a spot yet this year where you used Seattle. Maybe week 1 against the Rams, in which case you're not listening to this segment anyway because you lost. But I think Seattle going up against this Cardinals team definitely makes a lot of sense. If you still have the Niners, I think that they're a strong option as well. But, I think to your point, and the kind of overarching theme for this week is these are all very close games. So it's hard to find something where you feel like even if this team doesn't cover the touchdown, we're still getting there. So it's tough. It's tricky out there, but Seattle is my one. If you have already, kind of used your ammo on the bigger, your Chiefs, your Dolphins, Lions, so on and so forth. Maybe the Raiders would be an interesting kind of sicko pick, but
Dirty dog.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like
Brandon Kravitz brought that up on the radio show the other night. We were just about to take him out. He's like, "Oh, by the way, would you use the Raiders in Survivor?" And I was just taken aback. I mean, it's not that crazy this week specifically. Like, I think this is one. Like, I'm interested to see what the percentages are in Circa I mean, this could be what, 70-80% Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what, obviously if you have San Francisco, maybe you use them, but it's kind of still wait and see. If you have Buffalo, you're using them. But yeah, I mean, you could make a case for like 5 different games, that could be like your secondary one. I agree for the record on Seattle. I think that's pretty clearly the option, but like, I don't, do you really even trust Kansas City that much to win against the Chargers at home if you have them? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
No, I don't. And this can be a dangerous game to play, but I believe the Chiefs have a softer matchup on the other side of this week. So, I think if you still have them available, hold off on using them this week and then use them against Denver in week 8. I think that would be probably my strategy there.
All right. Give me your parlay of the week, John.
All right. We got 4 legs here. So half an octopus. See how we do. I got the Raiders -2.5. I got the Bucks -2.5. We got the Washington Commanders -2.5, and then
2.5 raid.
Yeah, baby. And then Bills money line. Tack that on there. Gives you a nice plus 770 payout.
Okay, I like it. I'm going to go with the Chargers plus 5.5. The San Francisco 49ers going back to the well. They got to cover 6.5. And we are going to involve the Browns-Colts total and take the under at 40. So Chargers, 49ers, Browns, Colts total. That gets you to around plus 550 over at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Teaser of the week. We got to get back on the right side of these. We're going with a 6.5 pointer this week. We are going to tease the Seattle Seahawks down to -1. Excuse me. Wait, I think I have this backwards now. I clicked the wrong team. Yes, no. All right, we're good. The line moved.
Mm-hmm.
Teaser of the week, resetting. We're teasing the Seattle Seahawks down to -1. So they just basically got to win that game against Arizona. We are teasing the LA Chargers up to plus 12. I think they can keep that, under 12 against the Chiefs. And we are going to tease the Buffalo Bills all the way to -2.5. Feel pretty good about them winning that game by at least a field goal against the New England Patriots. So 6.5 point teaser. That gets you to plus 150. John, I have a feeling I know where you're going with your lock of the week. Is it the Raiders?
It's the Raiders. The Raiders. Let's go. I thought, all right. Yeah, no, I worked on that before we got rolling here, but it's just it. And I've gone down with the ship betting against Chicago before. I'm still angry about my Patriots bet last year in Survivor against the Bears on Monday Night Football. It won't happen again. The autumn wind is a Raider. Max Crosby's about to do some crazy stuff on Sunday. The Raiders win this one and they cover. Let's go. Give me the Raiders. Give me Mark Davis and some lettuce wraps of PF Chang's.
All right. Big time stuff there. Call me a square, John. I'm taking the Bills. Biggest number on the board. I don't care. We've already hit that with the Dolphins a couple of times this year. I think this is a monster get right spot for the Buffalo Bills. Got to cover 9 at the New England Patriots. I don't see what the argument is for New England keeping this close. I think this is a downtrodden team, a downtrodden organization. It doesn't feel like one of those teams that is building any sort of momentum. If anything, they're losing momentum. It feels like, fans are kind of starting to accept their fate, and you start to kind of see that internally, right? I mean, Kayshon Boutte is, posted on his Instagram, like, get me out of here. That's not good. That doesn't happen to the New England Patriots. I think they are in for a smackdown against the Bills this week. So you're taking the Raiders. I am going with the Buffalo Bills. That will close it out for us in NFL Week 7. Best of luck if you're playing the slate this weekend. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter, hit us up in the comments on YouTube. We'll answer as many of those as we can. John, looking forward to doing this with you again next week, and best of luck.
Likewise, sir. Let's go Raiders.